I mean, this is really boring subject because, but then, you know, but definitely this is subject is very useful for myself, not necessarily very helpful for you, and maybe you'll find this is really, everybody knows about that, but I don't know, so that's why I think maybe it's a good way to share, okay. Anyway, so, and the topic is Kalyana Mitra. Sometimes we translate as spiritual friends. I mean, I need to have a very simple concept about the Kalyana Mitra first. Say, in generally, in Buddhism, the Buddha didn't use, lots of time using the spiritual friends. Even you have to regard the Buddha as a spiritual friend as well. And then that can be, have like a large variety of spiritual friends. I would say the lay people can be a spiritual friend, your good friends can be a spiritual friend. Of course, then the Maha, like the Sangha, the monastic monks can be the spiritual friends. So spiritual friend is not only, it's not the term only just for like, for the monks, but it's for anyone that really helping you to grow in spirituality. That's called a spiritual friend. But of course, in traditional, still we think that the monks are well trained and they are particularly really focused on their dharma. So that's why then they can be as one of the best examples that can be a spiritual friend, as I say. But the term, even if you look at the Sutta Pitaka or even the commentary, it never only designates for the monks. Even though always monk as always take that as an example. Okay, but this spiritual friend actually, they might have lots of different concepts. But I do find this text called Yogacarabhumi, since you are in this so-called Chinese temple. So, and I would just like to introduce not the Pali, but more than the Chinese. And also, don't be so happy now you have a PowerPoint, because later on all the language you don't understand. And because I did put the Sanskrit. Luckily, this text recently found, maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, almost like, then you do find the Sanskrit text. That's the reason why I pay attention, because I love a lot of comparative study between the Sanskrit and the Chinese. Okay, so now today I only restricted the topic on the spiritual friend in the context or in the context of the Shastra or the literature called the Yogacarabhumi. Okay, first, before we come that, even interestingly in Yogacarabhumi, there has two big topics, all about Agama or Nikaya. So a lot of people especially study Mahayana, I mean especially in China, as far as I understand, they somehow neglected the Agama and Nikaya. They always think that's because it's insignificantly not that important. But if you really look at this, such a big Shastra, literature, so actually a lot of Agama, all the Agama lists out, especially from the Samyukta Agama, or 就是 Chinese called 相应，就是叫做这个杂阿含，哈。So anyway, so since that I like to just first put this in the Chinese Agama. First say that the Buddha once advised, suggested the person if they want to achieve a good Dharma, they have to go for the 4 steps. First, they need to associate the spiritual friend. And the second, that of course, after associate the spiritual friend, you need to learn how to take care of the spiritual friends, and as well as how you really learn from that. And the second is that of course then you need to pay attention to the good teachings, and the third one, you have to be in Chinese translation kind of like well kind of like thought or well perceived. And the last one, then you're able to walk on the path, so that afterwards you can achieve this so-called nirvana. Now, if you look at the Pali, but if you compare the Pali, this is a little bit the Pali one, that's almost saying the same thing. Actually, I won't say almost, actually it's the same thing. But when you look at the Pali, it's very clear, the Pali, when you say that you have to first, you have to associate with the true man. This is another translation. You can say the true, good friends, or spiritual friend, and you hear the Dharma, and then you have to practice according with the true Dharma, and the last one. So because of that, so you could really walk on the path. So not necessarily, at least when I used to study in Sri Lanka, even though this popularly laid it out, but at least the way that I study, we didn't really hear about it so much. But on the contrary, this is something to do depict with the Chinese culture. But in Chinese, when you really study Agama, especially, but I'm not talking about when you study Pure Land school, that might be different. But when you really study in like in a college and what, this is so-called the 4 steps of what everybody should follow is really popular. So it's really almost every people who are in the Buddhist college, they know the concept. Like first, you must associate with good friends, listen to the good Dhamma, have the have a kind of like practice according with it, and then you should really walk, then you can walk on a path. That's the reason why in the Chinese culture, how do you find a good spiritual friend is really become a very big topic. Too. I mean, I'm saying that I'm giving this topic, of course, with the understanding of the Chinese background. Okay. And first, as I say, those who are read the Chinese, they were very happy about. If those doesn't read the Chinese, unfortunately, because this literature, you find in Tibetan, you find, of course, in Chinese, and now luckily we have not all, but most of the what you say what you call I forgot the word. We still have a lot, not all the Sanskrit, because some fragment is gone. But I think we have a large amount of fragments of Sanskrit still retained. Okay. Now, why I want to put this one here? Generally, that's the reason why people also want to study how this literature came. Does this literature called the Yogacarabhumi? The word yoga mean practice meditation. Achara, it's actually yoga achara. It's generally mean that you are working on, or sometimes you understand, depending on how you speak. Usually here mean the teacher of practicing this yoga. Bhumi generally mean the stage, because in the whole literature divided into 17 stages. Now today I'm mostly based on one. No, I won't boast on one. Basically, I just the whole literature actually, if you took now since we have a father here, I will just compare, kind of like a Bible, almost a double of the Bible. It's a huge text. So anyway, that literature, I want to say that here we have, in Chinese, we have 2 versions. One is been translated by Xuanzang, this is what I usually rely on. That almost like 602 to 664, 7th century. So one of the most popular translator in Chinese history. And actually the earliest, this text been translated, not whole, but partly. So it's called Pusa Di Ci Jing. It means the Bodhisattva Bhumi, or you could say Dara. I mean the holding of the Bodhisattva stage, the sutra on this. So, but it's actually translated by Dhammadipa during the 418. So, because of the Chinese have that translation, so it is quite sure, even though we cannot date back, when this so-called Yogacarabhumi been translated or been there. And this is also the way they have to, because this text was written by Asanga, the Bodhisattva Asanga. So, and that's also actually one of the way you have to find. But it has to be, Asanga has to be born before him, before this stage, right? Anyway, this is just I'm not here to do any compare, but generally that's just to show their earlier translation in China during the 418 AD, century. Now, but then you can read also for especially those who are knowing know Chinese. This is the reason why I always emphasize on for the Chinese reader. When you read something, don't take it for granted that's what you think it is true. Because if you have a lot of different versions to compare, you might be started to have a more clear picture. For example, in Chinese, it will say the first one, it's about, say that if people who are really good, they have the language, that's what the word they use. But actually the meaning is not about language, it's about that someone can really giving good admonitions. They can advise you best. But of course, maybe some Chinese disagree with me. They could say, how do you know which is right? But luckily now we have Sanskrit, and the Sanskrit definitely is clear. It means someone who are good in admonitions. And especially if you look at the whole literature, in the content of the whole literature, that mean you could give advices. All right, that's only for Chinese audience. I'm sure the other, it doesn't matter, okay? Right, just think we can go to the next, and I don't think you want to read the Sanskrit now, so okay, just go. Now, and here, what I'm trying to say is that the same in the literature trying to put it is, someone, if they are really fulfilling being a good friend or spiritual friends, so normally they have this eight kind of qualities, okay? So I put the Sanskrit, and I don't know the Tibetan, but this is a Tibetan word anyway. So, but those are the Chinese. So I don't want to, because this is not my main subject, just want to say, generally mean a good friends, a spiritual friends. In other words, this is a very good advice for us. Like we are trying to be a teacher, right? And then we definitely need to know that what kind of quality I should try to work on, so that, according to the Buddhist teachings, so what is meant by a really good of a spiritual friend is. So I do just simply say something like, basically, of course, you have to be Silavang, Bahustruta, Adhikanda, Anukampaka, sometimes generally mean you have to be good in your virtue, right? The first one, and second, you must be willing to learn a lot, not just like limited yourself, like having your good friend here, like any religion or even our different tradition is also learning, like that, right? And you're willing to learn a lot, always learning and learning and learning. And the third, that you must have the adhikanda too. Then whatever you learn, you must, like, especially when you say the meditation, you definitely have the attainment. It's not like just I learn it, I don't practice, basically. And then the first one, also anukampada, is very important. And then you must have the good quality of the compassion, that you must have those compassion so that you're willing to help people all the time, and then listen to the people problem and so forth. And also aparikina manas, generally mean the mind, the manasa, aparikinang. I'm sure the professor understands the language. Basically mean your mind have never tired. Sometimes I feel tired, like today, a whole day. But let's say if I remember actually that's the quality I need to practice, then I need to say, okay, I should not tell I'm tired. I need to really, because mind don't feel tired. And the sixth one, that is sharpmavat, I mean you really patient, has to be patient. Sometimes maybe you're facing something, disagree with you or whatever, not according with your wish, and come across, you confront something that's not, what your wish is to, but then you need to be patient. And vishamarata, I mean, you generally mean that you have the brave, I mean, this is, I usually have to say, in the past, I never understand what does it mean by this. But after when I work with so many organizations, and this is how I learned, you have to be brave. Don't be shy to say anything. If that's your idea, you think that's good, you might be not perfect, but you think that's really something you need to work on, just be brave. Do it. Say it. And I have to say, I've been a monk for almost 30 years, and then during my past experience, I always I don't want to say that, maybe people will misunderstood me, maybe now I think, if you don't say it, people will never understand you. So, you don't say it, they still misunderstand you, that's fine. The misunderstanding is always there. But you say, at least people get some other opinion, they could hear something. So, and this is actually saying that one of the mean the quality. The last one mean the vikarana, basically ubeta. So it generally means that you definitely need to put, the say that is you have to be, maybe my literal translation means the skill in your language. In other words, you might be not worried, not so, but you still learn how to refine your language, how to use the nice language to convince the people to tell them. So that's the thing. Now, actually, this is just to say the nature of the spiritual teachers, or the so-called nature of the spiritual friends. They must have this kind of thing, and what they have to do. That's in the 5 parts now. Now, the first part, let me just say simply that first that somebody is willing to practice the admonishes, that you are always giving advices for people. Second, and then you need to able to, I won't say force, able to make people to memorize what you're telling them. Let's say, I'm sure everybody who are here are the leaders, they know. You tell them again, then next day they forget. And you tell them again, next day they forget. I don't know how you feel, I always feel that. So I say, why I want to talk? After I talk so long and then nobody remember what you're talking about, right? So, and this is the thing, it's important that as a spiritual friend, so you always must, think that is a serious subject, that you make them to remember what you're saying, or remember what the teaching is about, and so forth. And the third is, this is more about practice size. Our article generally, well, generally the word literally mean the instruction. But here, generally the instruction, then you are not just only let them to commit the memory, but you need to learn, you need to instruct them. So how to do it, right? So the instruction, I mean, particularly like in Buddhism, talk about meditation, like a practice side, how you can instruct them. And the anusasako, and you have also, let me see, it's very similar, but here you need to have the way to let them to understand the teaching generally. And then the last one, that you not only just a good spiritual friend, not only by that, then you also must train them to be able to speak the teachings, you know. So, but generally mean, okay, let's just, because I need to finish it, okay? Why don't we just go? So, this is, I'm not going to say all the things, but it just at least to saying that, you know, a spiritual friend, first one means someone who really know how to admonish us. So it has to based on the 5 factors to do the admonishes. First factor is that he says something really true, not lying, basically, okay? The second, he have to say something in the right time, not in the wrong time. You know that sometimes when you know it's not the correct time, don't say it, just keep quiet. So, and then the third one, you have to say something must be understand is for their benefit, not only just for your benefit, right? So you say it just for the benefit. So this is the third one. The fourth one, and then you must always try to give them advice with a soft voice, like a gently, like with a gentle way. The last one, and then you must always, when you say, you need to check, you are not with the jealous, no, and not with the jealousy mind and so forth, but you're always speaking, you always giving advice with the good intention. In other words, here, let me say that a little. Here, actually, even Chinese looks like means san you, but here, I just want to say you must feel the friendliness to the people to speak. Like you must treat them almost like a friend. But if we look at the concept is actually almost completely same as I'm just giving like a Pali Sutta. That's same thing in Chinese too, Agama. Pali, there's one sutta called, I think I typed it wrong. It's kaku, it's not ma, okay? Sorry, kaku, kakacha ubama. Ubama means simile. Simile of the soul. Anyway, I'm not going to relate the story, but you can go back and read the Majjhima Nikaya number 21. But because the last thing actually the Buddha said exactly the same thing that he told the monk. He said, when you agree to come to our order, so what's your aim? And he said, of course, our aim is to relieve my anxiety, have cut off my defilement and so forth. However, that monk, because he created so many problems. And then that's why then the Buddha say a very wonderful story. I don't want to say that here now, but you can go back and read. And in the end, actually, that's what the Buddha gives the suggestion, exactly the same. But now this is, I'm not copy this is from the Sutta, but this is from the Yogacarabhumi, okay, literature. But it's almost like if you, this is one of the way I always learn Buddhism, because we have so many traditions, but you do find all the traditions, they have many similar things actually saying the same way. Those are, at least it certainly is recognized by all the tradition. This is the main idea of what the Buddhism is about. This is one part of it, okay? Okay, that at least in the Pali, this will be definitely understand as you must have the loving kindness mind when you speak. But in the Sanskrit, it doesn't necessarily, but it defines a little similar. He only used the mitra vataya, huh? Anyway, you're not with the dresa antarana, not with the dresa mean kind of anger, yeah, with the kind of like anger sort of thing, but always with the mitra. But the mitra here, of course, to some people different way of understanding, but in the Pali, that definitely is mean you must have the loving kindness mind, mean the metta mind, okay? All right, I guess this is a very important thing, because usually it's the same thing when I'm just saying that I'm not giving the talk about you, it's always giving the saying this to myself, remind myself. When I want to say something, I need to check whether I have this 5 kind of thing. Sometimes, you know, you might have a good intention and with a love mind, but then you say that in the wrong time, you know. Okay, everything gone wrong. I remember one day we were invited to go to the Thai embassy, and then I was advised something you don't have to say it, you know. I need to keep my mind, just be, that is the wrong time. Okay, all right, anyway. Now, not only that you only not only just advised by that they must have this attitude, not only by that, they also actually if they somehow in something like that, if they somehow know that somebody had did something wrong, kind of like that, wrong, so you keep that in mind, but you need to, when there's a times come, you need to basically remind them that you maybe did that wrong, okay? But do remember, you don't point out right away, but you just keep that in mind. That's the kind of like carry the message, mean you keep that in mind. And when the right time comes, you remind them that, oh, maybe, you know, maybe that day you speak something not inappropriate, maybe something like that, for example, like that, okay. So the second one, now we move to the second one. That means you have to keep them put in the memory. So I don't think I need to say too much about that. So in order to make sure whether they remember that what you tell them or you teach them, so you have to keep on sometimes asking the question. Don't just say it, but you can ask, you know, what do you think, for example, and then you could make them to say, could you remember what I just said, like that, okay? This is, maybe it sounds very normal for a lot of people, but you have to imagine this text been written down like at least 5th century, right? At least maybe much earlier, but that's definitely have a really detailed way of telling how a person can be instructing others, okay? Can instruct the others in a better way, right? And I think all right. And again, so you have to tell them the teachings and tell them the meaning, not just the teaching. When you tell them the teachings and you have to tell them the meaning. So even in a long time, actually I think it's good for both sides. So the spiritual friends should also know that you did say something in a long time ago. And you can ask them again, do you remember when 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I did, you know, giving this, you know, this kind of teachings or so forth. So, and then if they don't remember, you need to bring them up. In other words, it's not like just whatever you say right now, or today, or, you know, recently, but even in the past, that you need to remind your friends that, so we did have discussed about that, we did, you know, talk about this. So, okay, that's, I guess, it sounds not very new, but I guess important is just saying that not only just recent time, but even in a long, long time, that's what you have admonished. I'm sure that this is applicable for people who are having a kid, right? So, you know, you say something, you know, but you still remind them, let them to know that they need to keep in the memory what they learned. So sometimes you need to remind them, you know, long ago I did, you know, teach that, I did say that, so do you remember? So maybe it sounds insignificant with some people, but actually I guess that is an indirect way of teaching the people that you need to remember the good thing in your heart, okay? So, and the third one is I just explained, is mean our, what we call the avavadika, mean, so here the instruction, at least according to this literature, it means you need to instruct them that they have to know how to stay in a calm place, like not very busy place. And then you need to instruct them the samatha and vipassana, mean the insight meditation and the concentration technique. And then this instruction has to be, I put the red mark here, in the Sanskrit is adulomikang avavadang. It means it has to be instruct them gradually, or you could say in order, orderly instruct them. So, so, and then I also put this same word. The problem is not about the instruction, but the instruction of their meditation skill, either insight meditation or the concentration meditation, but with orderly, okay, orderly. And this orderly, I also find in the same literature say, you know, that's what is believed that actually the Buddha, when they give the instruction to us, is always start to talk in order. I'm going to say what it is later. So this is the reason why if we want to follow what the Buddha, of course we all believe that the Buddha is enlightened one and the most have the most wisdom in the world. So of course then what he have done, then we can learn from him. So and that's why it's here in others say that because if we can meet the Buddha, when the Buddha was born, and then we can listen to the teachings, and then we can listen his instruction. That means the meditation technique or so forth, ordering. Okay. I'm not going to say all this word because look at this Chinese. It's a classical Chinese also. People will go into sleep if they just. No, I didn't mean you skip it. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, I'm not going to read all this thing. Just simply to say, actually, even the instruction. So in the more detail, you have to tell them even if they want to pay attention to something on their meditation, you should instruct in a proper way. I don't want to say all in detail now. So for example, what should be focused, what should not be focused, like that, And then when you are focused on something, what kind of thought should stay, what kind of thought should not stay. I will just literally translate. And also when you're doing the insight meditation, what kind of thing when you're doing, it really cut off your defilement, what doesn't work so well. Those are put in the three kind of instruction. Okay, I mean this is for people who are only interested in like meditation if people don't understand what meditation is, maybe more like people are interested in like they only can not rely on anything but just the mind, just to focus on the teachings. That's you could simply understand that's mean my meditation. Okay, yep, and I guess another thing that from same literature, so about this orderly instruction, is we also know when the Buddha, when he getting older, there's a lot of time then the Buddha asked his disciples to give the talk instead of him. He always give the excuse saying that I'm old now, I want to take a rest. Okay, and of course this reason is always been discussed because somehow the culture is that they also think that the Buddha shouldn't have those problems, but must be the Buddha, when he did that way, he must have the intention. So here he just want to say, the same way he want to say that in the same literature also mentioned the intention why he want to give that intention, that because first he want to have this older monk who are experienced monk can give the instruction instead of the Buddha, so that the young monk would not be so proud. I mean, that sounds a little illogical to your guy. What my understanding it means, he wanted to say that, for example, if the instruction always given by the monk, by the Buddha, then the young monk might be always thinking that, I'm young monk, actually I learn a lot, but what about the older monk, they not necessarily learn better than I do, right? So, but then the Buddha always that time when he left, he asked the older monk, say, you just give the instruction instead of me, So it's a way to make culturally make that the young monk learn how to be humble. And the second reason he say it's, but also the Buddha definitely need the monk, any type of monk, to learn something from the other, so that also then the monk have the courage to give the teachings. I mean, that's generally that's what he say. And of course the teaching also the Buddha always advised has to give the instruction always in order. Okay, okay, right. Now, even in the instruction also, in general, if you don't know what are these content, the content is also very popular in any Buddhism. That is, the content is also about the sila, the talk about the virtue, talk about the concentration, samadhi, talk about the wisdom, prajna, talk about the vimuttikata, the liberation, right? And talk about the knowledge of the liberation, right? So, and those are usually they call the Panchakaya Dharma, right? The five Dharma body. And this is it's always believed the Buddha must have this five body, and Arahant also have this five body. Okay. In other words, I mean the topic is always with that as almost like the token of Buddhism. So, all right. Now. And also the instruction, also, you are not only just instructor, you must also instruct them sometimes not to have too much craving for the thing. That's one of the talk. And the second, you must also be contented, you know. If you don't know what you should give an advice, you must give an advice that don't be carried away by the craving, you know, and also don't be, and also you should have a contented mind, you know. And I'm sorry, this is a list, but it's not too long, don't worry. And also the instruction, which is, since this is a Buddhism, right? And this instruction about how you can cut off the defilements, the problem. And the instruction also how you can really relieve yourself from the craving, from the induced by the cravings, and like, you know. And also the instruction on how you can really peacefully, like a nirodha, completely become peaceful and cease the problem. You know, those are the, but when you look at the list, you somehow knew that this is mean actually the order mean. So sometimes people know the method, know the main teaching in Buddhism, but you still have to tell them to be aware that don't carry away by your craving, and don't carry away, and also have to always learn to be content with whatever you have, right? And then okay, again you say you should learn the content or the topic will be about, you know, the cut off the defilements. Okay, those are the kind of main teachings. Okay, thank you. And also the last thing is tell them that actually how you should be. Okay, I don't want to say, basically mean how you can decrease your problem, and then also how you could, what kind of problem you can be, you don't have to care about those things. Something like a lot of topic. The last thing, of course, is very important, is mean you must also understand the dependent origination. So that's all the topic. I mean, this is believe that the Buddhist concept of what a spiritual friend is about, you know. All right. Now we come to the fourth one. We're almost done. Okay, don't fall asleep yet. Okay. So the fourth one is okay. So actually, this is Anusasako Bhavati generally mean. You know, Anusasana mean ministry. Mean, you know, you have the Buddhist ministry. Mean, I think that's how I translate ministry. I'm not sure. Does it carry different meanings? So here generally mean that. Here it's about, you know, how you really run the Buddhist missionary, okay? So it just means the first thing that in the Buddhist ministry that one of the main attention is that have to make sure that either the teacher or either everyone, you know, including the spiritual teachers, that they also always still believe that the morality or the virtue as the most important thing, like that. Okay, yeah. So that's how the whole ministry is about. Okay, and then if they really, of course, people might make mistake, and then they really commit any wrongdoing, a mistake, then make sure that the spiritual friends themselves, they certainly need to, like, they will admit what they have to make the mistake, and then they also know that how to, well, I maybe say it simple, basically how you can actually grow your how to say, your morality or your virtue better and better, like this. Okay, I don't want to say in the detail. Generally mean that what should do, what should not do. They have something like that. Even though it might be appear, not appear, but you still recognize this is not good for your morality, then you should really, you know, try to change it. You might commit some wrong with it, and you need to admit it too, you know, like that. Okay, and and even in the ministry also, not only that, then they have to. Also, in the ministry itself, mean the sasana itself, you have to discuss about the importance of the generosity, right? Or that means discuss about the importance of the morality and the importance of the way that how to be born in heaven. I know in some Buddhists against that, but I'm here. Why I want to put here? This is not I say. I have no right. I'm not Buddha and I'm not Arahant. I'm sure I cannot say anything. I just want to base on the literature. So even some Buddhism, they say, oh, you don't talk about the heavens because this is not what it is. But actually, no, because there are people like it, you know. So, and also you can talk about the way how you're born to the heavens. And then of course, and then you need to also have topics mostly about, even if you have a lot of desire, how you can tame the desire so that you can live much happier. In that respect, you must understand the danger of desire, how you can out of the desire, and then so that you can have a purification, like that. So those are what we call the step 2. You know, I'm sure those who read the Nikaya, they always have that. That usually when you first met a person are not too much of understand the sasana, I mean the Buddhist missionary. Usually you start with talking the generosity, right? When they understand how important the generosity is, and then you start to talk about importance of the virtue. And when they have the virtue, then you start to talk that by doing those, they could be born in a good place like in heavens, right? Right? And then this is a more advanced stage, and then now you start to see those small kind of the craving and desires there. You need to teach them how they can out of it. Maybe they can be descent by that, you know.
Actually, okay. You're talking about the heaven. In the Sanskrit, I can read it. Swarga is there, right?
Yeah, Swarga Katang. Yeah. All right. Now, okay. Of course, that's it? Of course, no. We have, unfortunately. That's why we have more job. Father Rooney, we have more job than you, right? We cannot just stop on the front, and then we still have further. And the further is that, and then you also, time to time, you also have to talk the sublime teachings of the Four Noble Truths, okay? Or at least that associate with the Four Noble Truths first, something that connect to the Four Noble Truths. You need to say that. Or that's further. But of course, the Four Noble Truths, I don't have to say that now. You need to talk about the suffering, you need to talk about the original suffering, the cessation or original suffering, and then the path leading to the cessation of the suffering. So when they are even in a mature, become more mature, so certainly because of the right teachings, so this is how you keep the right teachings stay forever. So, okay. Now, I also, for the audience of Chinese especially, some Chinese always think, oh, the Four Noble Truths maybe is not the Mahayana Buddhism, but this is a Mahayana text, okay? So the Mahayana text also, no, that's what I say. Actually, a lot of people have a misconcept. Mahayana text maybe have lots of different. No, without Four Noble Truths, there's no enlightenment to talk about. That for sure. Okay. So and then here also, and then there's a lot of way saying that then you must even in order to explain this, you must learn how to refine your language. I'm not going to say, oh, like how to use a sentence, how to make the sentence beautiful, and you have to talk not in losing your main topic and this and blah. A lot of this, you know, the Sanskrit is, I would say in Indian people are really care about the order of the language and so forth, all this kind of thing, okay, right? So, and I didn't have time to breathe even. And you must be also recognized, you're giving this talk, you must aware that they must be content, happy, joy, become courage, right? You know, so you must also recognize their response. The response has to be really happy, have more courage, joy, and then love it, right? Like now, I'm sure, I'm sorry if your guy sitting here, you don't like it. I have forced you now. You know, when you give that kind of talk, any talk from the beginning, like a generosity up to the point, Four Noble Truths, if the people are not interested, then you stop, right? This is not the correct time, not the right time. But anyway, so it's the literature right beautifully way to just say, you must also make them to feel that way, okay, too. And out of your compassion, for the benefit of the other, okay, with the thinking of the goodness of the others, you could some people also translate this as a out of compassion. One is you initiate with a good mind, and then you have the out of compassion, not because you're saying this because you want to gain something from them, right? And then, so you are with the respect, with really honor to what you are saying, that, you know, then you are not feeling very proud, and then you are not also slight on the other. You know, sometimes they say something maybe, oh, I'm the best, you know, the other is not good. Not don't do that. So I mean, you don't have the pride and then do not slight on the others. That's how you give the talk. Okay, that's why you run the Buddhist ministry, kind of like. Yeah. Okay, I'm happy now, done. So the conclusion is just now is that actually when you are doing this way, so it's somehow, it's also, you are fulfilling the 8 kind of quality I mentioned in the earlier time. So, and this is how, in this literature trying to, it's almost serving as a commentary. Even in the Buddhist text, we always say the spiritual teacher, spiritual friends, or even, as I say, it can be any friend, but not necessarily have a very detailed contact what the spiritual friend, in what respect is a spiritual friend is about. Here, to say that, so when you are fulfilling the 5 things, that then automatically the 8 kind of quality I just mentioned in the earlier time will combine together. So then you have the so-called really mean a nature of a spiritual friend. So, at the end, okay, and thank you for your attention. And then I certainly hope that the talk will be helpful for, at least to me, it's a guidance for how we can, helpful for the world. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.